Amy.
Hey
Good
Melinda,
to
how are
see you
you
again.
today?
Good.
That was a great conversation that Brett and Jessica just had. So excited to continue it over into our topic of conversation. So just as a quick introduction, it says it here. I'm Amy. I'm a senior account executive at GroundTruth on the CPG vertical, and Henkel is one of our amazing partners. So Melinda, if you want to give a quick intro about yourself, and then we'll dive into the chat today.
Wonderful. Yes. Hi. Hello to the audience. My name is Melinda V. Johnson. As mentioned before, I am the director of marketing for the hair business within Henkel Beauty Care. And I've been on the business all of a couple months, so it's super exciting, but I'm thrilled to be here today to just kind of talk as I am a diverse voice in retail marketing and brand marketing. So excited to kind of have this fireside chat with everybody today, with Amy to chat with you.
Amazing. That's a great segue into our first question. So we would love to hear a little bit about your career journey in the diverse retail space and how you landed your current role as director of marketing here for Henkel.
Wonderful. So I would say the journey has definitely not been linear. I have actually been in the beauty industry for about 15 years. It's hard to believe because I'm so youthful looking. But no, it's been an exciting journey. And it's interesting we're talking about the retail space because I actually started my career out of college as a sales rep. So I started in sales, and what I loved about it was that I owned a territory and called on customers, and I really loved this idea of owning your own business. So when I ended up going back to get my MBA, I really focused in and honed in on brand management. So I actually started my marketing career with Procter & Gamble, where I was at for 9 years. And I've always had a love of beauty and music and the arts and entertainment. So the beauty space is a natural fit for me. I actually started on, at the time, P&G owned this brand. They no longer do anymore. But I started on their Clairol hair color portfolio as a typical right out of school assistant brand manager, kind of managing the day-to-day business and analyzing our brand and competitors and managing the budgets and working on new product innovation launches. So I worked in hair color, and then I moved over to the CoverGirl business. So I moved into cosmetics, which was a lot of fun. I would say it was probably one of the most challenging roles because cosmetics is such a dynamic beauty business and that it's super competitive. There's a lot of players. And from a loyalty perspective, consumers are always trading out different makeup products and trying new things. So to get them to be loyal can be a challenge, but it was a fun challenge. So I did that for a bit. And then I left from kind of like managing the day-to-day regional brand business and took an assignment in innovation. So I was leading global innovation for Frederick Fekkai, which is a premium hair care brand that P&G at the time had acquired. Again, they no longer own anymore. So lots of lots of movement within which companies own which brands. But that was wonderful because I really got to dive in deep with understanding this very nuanced, high-end premium hair care luxury user. And I would say that's not necessarily me as a consumer, but it was just fascinating to really understand their wants and needs, and then to develop products to meet those needs. So that was great. And then from that, so I went all the way from like innovating on the front end to then a shopper marketing role at the Walmart team in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. So that was my first foray into the kind of shopper and retail marketing landscape. And it was so eye-opening and such a wonderful experience kind of for the rest of my career because it really enabled me to see how retailers make decisions about our brands. What are the things they consider, how they look at our categories and our markets. When you're a brand owner, you look at your brand as your like little baby and you love it. And it's the only thing in the world that matters. But to a retailer, they have a lot of products that they own. So you get to see from a different lens, like your impact within the broader category. So I did that. I actually moved to another innovation role. And then after that, I actually changed companies. I left P&G and I worked at L'Oreal for 5 years. That's where I was at before I moved to my current role. But at L'Oreal, I started leading some of the multicultural brands within the L'Oreal portfolio. So namely, a brand targeted towards African American women called Dark and Lovely. And then some other kind of smaller brands that were either targeted towards men or smaller like styling brands within the portfolio. But Dark and Lovely was the main one. So spent 2 years really managing that business and honestly like bringing it back to a place where it could be set up to grow and really looking at some of the business fundamentals. But I love that assignment because it was super challenging to take a historical brand that's been around for 40 years and reposition it to make it relevant for today's consumer. So I'm super proud of the work done there and where the brand is today. And then I did another shopper marketing stint on the L'Oreal Paris business with the Target account. And different from my first time, because there was some space in between, what's wonderful about the retail landscape now is, the whole buzz is around everything being omni-channel and how as marketers, we can really take insights and influence consumers to shoppers as they go along their journey into purchase. So what was great there is all the tools that I used back in my, years previous when I was working in shopper were completely different. Now we were looking at how to reach her via social, via digital, via in-store tools that, were much more digitally based and interactive. So, so many great learnings. And, I think that took me to where I am today, which is, I'm now back running a brand and a business, which is super exciting. On Henkel, from a beauty perspective, they own some, in the US market, smaller brands. Globally, definitely much bigger brands because they're a company based in Germany. But the brands I now manage on the hair side are called Schwarzkopf. So primarily in the US, it's a color portfolio. And then Got to Be, which is a very Gen Z targeted portfolio of products in the styling category, as well as bold hair color. So that's kind of the journey that led me to where I am. But what I would say, and kind of summarizing it up, is that it hasn't been linear. And I think for the marketers and brand people out there, as you look at your career and depending on whatever path you are on, but as you're gaining kind of the skills to develop and become general managers and CMOs and that sort of thing, it's really important to make sure you're getting the breadth of experience. And retail marketing is a big piece of that. I think it was super critical for me to know what I'm solving for when a consumer goes into the store or goes online to purchase a product, so that I can enable better marketing plans, better product development at the beginning of the kind of marketing process.
You have such a wealth of knowledge from the retailer side, the brand side, the shopper marketing side. So thank you for all of that great insight. We can continue to learn from all of your experiences. So knowing that you came previously from a shopper marketing role, why do you think having that shopper marketing knowledge is super important in your development as a marketer and a future brand leader?
So it is super important. And I think it varies depending on the organization. But I think one of the things as I was coming up, having a marketing role at a customer team, like working hand in hand with salespeople and the people kind of owning the account, those roles were few and far between. So they were very coveted. But what it gave you was really this kind of insight into a whole nother world of sales and how sales, the sales teams take our products and how they have to position them in order to get distribution, in order to get kind of the required merchandising to be able to compete in the market, and how they really influence at the customer level. So I would say, as a marketer, it really, some of the skills that I felt like I built up during this time were definitely selling and negotiating skills, because no matter what your role on the team was, you were ultimately challenged to influence whoever at the retailer was necessary to drive your business. So as a marketer, I would work with marketing people at either, Walmart or Target or CVS or Walgreens or wherever. But I was, part of my job was to help influence them as it related to, my particular business strategies, and ideally partnering together with them so that it's mutually beneficial results that come out of the partnership. So I'd say, it really taught you selling skills, but then also it really gave you a look, because the retailers honestly have a wealth of information and they know the shoppers better than anybody else. So it also was an opportunity to really leverage their insights and partner with them to develop better plans, to develop better products. And honestly, the feedback coming from those sales teams, and as a marketer, as I interacted with them and learned, were crucial in taking them back to the brands to say, these are the types of things, these are the types of products that our customers are saying we need to be looking at, because they are seeing this trend within their stores, within their shoppers. So it's really quite critical. And I think when you're managing your brand, making sure you're definitely tapped in to how your retailers are performing, what they think of your products, the partnership, and being really, really flexible to kind of share maybe some thinking before it's completely baked and locked, so that you can get that buy-in early, versus, especially within beauty people tend to be perfectionists. Like, we want everything to be beautiful and like super polished, and then go ta-da and present like this like work of art to you. And one of the things you'll learn is that it's actually better to kind of show things that are undone and get that critical feedback built into your plans early on, so that you can adjust. So from that standpoint, I think it's really important. And I would encourage anybody as they're looking at their career, if you're on a marketing team, marketing tends to be like the hub and the center of all the activity on your business, and kind of going off and doing like a retail marketing or shopper marketing assignment isn't quite the same. But I think those ancillary skills that you pick up will be so valuable. And you learn a lot from the salespeople too. I mean, they're super talented and great at what they do in terms of influencing customers. So it's definitely worthwhile, and why I did a second round of it within, assignment of it within my career, because it's that important. And the landscape had changed. So it was a really great experience.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great to hear your perspective being on the brand side of the shopper marketing. How will your multicultural marketing experience take Henkel to new directions and allow them to think bigger now in your current role?
So that is, no, that's a great question. So I actually think this might be a good time, I think, for me to kind of introduce like Henkel and play my Henkel video. So, I mean, if the team could maybe cue that up, because then I'll show that, and then I can talk like about some of the experiences that I've had leading into that. Perfect. Thank you, guys.
For more than 120 years, we've been experts in beauty, true beauty, creating iconic brands for consumers and professionals. We never stop challenging ourselves for him, for her, for him, for them. That's why our purpose is bigger than selling products. It goes beyond looking beautiful. We want to make people feel beautiful as well. Because people who look and feel beautiful are more confident. And people with confidence connect better. They connect, share moments, build bridges together, not walls. They truly make the world a better place. In a world where so many problems drive us apart, bringing people together through beauty is worth any effort. Providing more and more sustainable solutions and products is important like never before. Creating billions of unique moments with superior services and products that look, smell, and feel delightful. What does it mean to be a true beauty company? To have a beautiful impact on people. to make the world a more beautiful place. And above all, doing it together.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So, Amy, to answer your question about my multicultural experience, so it's interesting throughout my career, and I think a lot of it is because as I was coming up, there, you know, I oftentimes was one of very few, what I would call, back in the day, we used to call us underrepresented minorities, but as a Black woman, I was one of very few within my marketing team. So it inevitably, there's a natural fit for me to kind of work on, at the time, like our multicultural plans. So it's like we would work on the brand, and then there'd be like, oh, we noticed we have an over-index with Hispanic consumers on this particular product. I would work kind of on those kind of complementary plans. So like throughout my career, I would say, even, back to my early days of hair color, when I was on the CoverGirl business, I actually managed our Queen Latifah African-American line of cosmetics, which it's so interesting with like Fenty Beauty and all of these like more recent cosmetic launches. Like I think back to those days and I'm like, we were so ahead of our time with the Queen Latifah line. Like it definitely met a need, but like to now see the explosion of every brand making sure that they have the right shades for all types of consumers. It's come into its own, which is a great thing. But, back then I was managing that portfolio. When I was at the Walmart team, I was working back as a P&G at the time, and we had an initiative called My Black is Beautiful. So I was working on plans with Walmart, how to partner with that particular initiative with Walmart, as we would, one of the big projects I worked on was bringing My Black is Beautiful to the Essence Festival along with Walmart. So I would say along my career, I've always kind of, when I've worked on more general market brands, have always been that voice in person to kind of work on the multicultural plans. And I would say, as I now work with Henkel, there's so much opportunity, I think, in beauty right now in general, that I think, with everything that's happened, over the past year with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, with this kind of people awakening to the fact that we're a diverse country, and we need to make sure that we're catering to kind of everybody. I would say a lot of brands have woken up and realized, and I tell this to people all the time, like, because of the changing demographics of the country, if you don't have a multicultural plan, you don't really have a growth plan. So it's no longer can be like an add-on. It really has to be ingrained into the business. So I think the experience I bring kind of in working in this space, I really hope to leverage that as I work on Henkel. So as you saw from the video, Henkel Beauty incorporates hair, and then there's another side that's our body care business, mainly with the Dial brand. But on the hair side, there's two brands, big brands that I manage. One's called Schwarzkopf, and the other's Got to Be. And I would say that, especially in the hair landscape, the category has significantly shifted in terms of everybody waking up and realizing that there's so many hair textures out there that we need to be innovating against and developing products against and communicating to. So I think, as I'm coming into the Henkel organization, that's definitely a huge focus to make sure that, we are being representative and talking to all consumers in the right way, but also talking to her with the products that kind of fit her needs, fit her or his needs, and that will, really speak to them. So that's kind of where I see my fit. I'm just bringing a ton of experience from kind of working on general marketing brands and kind of making sure that we're representative across the board in terms of attracting consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that there's so much opportunity to grow this part of the Henkel business. And obviously you have a large, diverse audience already. So what type of initiatives are they putting in place to ensure that they're really speaking to their diverse community? How does that impact the types of product assortments that they're putting out and things like that?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a very broad question. I love it though. It's so many things. So so it's interesting, I think as a business, we've recently like uncovered a nugget. And it's actually not it's not a super recent nugget, but it's a nugget that's now really built some traction. And I think this is where, I'm coming in as a very strong advocate of how we diversify like our marketing activity and really speak to consumers. So on our Got to Be brand, one of the more recent insights. So the action isn't recent, just the fact that now we know it for certain and the organization knows it, is on the Got to Be styling business. We have a large number of multicultural Black women who actually use Got to Be styling for their styling needs. And so there's a variety of usages from what we call laying down edges to making sure wigs are secure and protective hairstyles are in place. But it's a more recent insight that, as a brand, we have this like large population that is using our product. And so there's a groundswell of support to really make sure that, hey, we really need to be supporting this key consumer. So one of the insight pieces is that over a quarter of our Got to Be actually it's called Glued, our Got to Be Glued consumers are African American, which as a population African American is about 10%. So completely over-indexed in this consumer population using our products. So there's a lot of work and effort to make sure that we're reaching out to her, we're understanding her, we're making sure that we understand her needs, so that as we work on developing new products, that we can meet those needs. And then also, I think coming in, there's work that we're looking to do as a brand to really solidify what we stand for all consumers. So I think on the Got to Be brand, it's really focused on a younger Gen Z, young millennial consumer. And our broader campaign is called For Whoever You Want to Be. And it's really about embracing like who you are and what you stand for unapologetically. And I think this speaks to definitely a lot of, younger consumers in not feeling like they need to be confined to who they are. Not confined to who, but not be confined to societal stereotypes of who they should be, and that they can kind of be free to be themselves. And so when you think about this, when you say Gen Z, it's interesting. People think it's completely age, but it's the most diverse population, it's the most generational cohort that's out there. So Gen Z and multicultural kind of go together. Like they're one and the same, basically. So we have such a diverse user for our Got to Be business. And one of the things we're sharpening up is making sure that we're connecting with each kind of key consumer within that business with relevant messaging, with relevant products. And as a brand, we want to make sure that we are supporting the communities, who are purchasing our products. So we're looking at, what some of those, I'd say in terms of linking what we stand for some of the cause marketing and support out there, that we want to make sure we're good stewards of the consumers that use our products.
Yeah, I love that campaign. I mean, that really resonates, I think, with a lot of people listening in today. I think we might have time for one or two more questions before Q&A.
Okay.
And just as a reminder to anyone listening, if you have questions for Melinda, to pop them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. But curious to know, what sort of trends did you see happening related to hair care and beauty throughout the pandemic, and how did your business respond?
Yes. So I think the pandemic impacted, I think, every business out there. And as I talk to colleagues and friends across the gamut, if you had a brand that was feeding into the need to be clean or the need to sanitize, you were your business was off the charts, and you probably were struggling to even make enough to keep it in stock. In beauty, depending on the category, we saw a lot of different impacts. So interestingly enough, from a hair color perspective, because salons were closed during a portion, and people were at home, we actually saw a really huge spike during kind of the March to early June timeframe, where consumers were flocking to kind of buy retail hair color because their salons weren't open, and they wanted to either cover their gray roots, or the other trend we saw is that they were experimenting with color, which is great. So I'd say one of the interesting phenomenons we saw coming out of the pandemic that has continued, and that as a business on the Henkel side, we want to continue to drive, is kind of the use of bold color becoming more normalized. So having like different colored hair, bright hair, really becoming normalized. And across across all ages. I mean, you're starting to see across the gamut, women with, streaks of purple or, pink or whatever. So those bolder colors are really taking off and have continued. And so we want to continue to kind of fuel that momentum. But also, I love that, as a society, we're becoming more open and inclusive in how we think about societal norms or what it means to have a certain look, and that we're tearing down kind of some of those barriers. So that's one of I would say, as it relates to what I'm working on Henkel, that's one of the big trends that, on a positive way. On the downside, I also kind of manage a styling business, and styling, which, I mean, I'm guilty too. I did not style my hair very much during the past year. Yeah, like people were, women and men weren't necessarily, no one was going anywhere, so there was no need to style your hair. I mean, it was hard enough to, just clean yourself, let alone like style your hair. So so that's one where, as you think about trends, and we're still trying to predict, like, when will things turn around? When will it happen when the world opens back up? I'm in the New York area. Everything is opening up next week, supposedly. So, it's a prediction game. But that's one we have our eye on, because, I think the key is what will be the norms that continue, and how will things forever be changed? So I think people will eventually definitely style their hair again, but it's like, what will that look like? More to come. We all have our eyes on it. There's a lot of predictors out there.
It's for the better the salons are opening. I think we all know someone who gave themselves a really bad harecut over quarantine.
Bad haircut, color job gone wrong. But you know what? Hey, here's the thing. You weren't going out, so no one really saw it that much.
It was easier to hide the mistake.
Easier to hide, absolutely.
And just last question before we jump into the Q&A, I guess, to give us your insight, given all the changes and shifts that happened this year, what are your predictions for the industry for the second half of 2021?
So that is the magic 8-ball question. We are preparing. So, I mean, as I think about planning, we're doing long-term planning, out to the end of 2022, 23, from a product development and innovation standpoint. In terms of the back half of this year, I mean, one of the things that we have our eye on is just really being prepared in terms of how consumer habits may adjust once kind of the world opens back up. But I think, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think from a hair color perspective, we continue to see the bolder color trend moving forward. As I think about some of the past areas I worked on, like cosmetics, and hair care. But speaking of cosmetics, I do predict that people will start to use more color cosmetics. Over the pandemic, we saw a focus, really, because of the mask kind of culture that we're kind of now in. People are really focusing on their eyebrows and their lashes, making sure the part that wasn't covered. So I think that will definitely, that will come back. And I think from a styling perspective, we will have a comeback in styling. Although I think coming out of this, you're going to see more styling products for this more kind of diverse U.S. population we're in. And so I think you may see a shift in more kind of not so overdone, more casual, natural styling across the board versus, you know, really structured updos and things that are like very formal. I think there may be, this is just my prediction now. There may be, I think that people will be a bit more relaxed than we might have been before the pandemic.
Well, that's all very exciting and
So
for
we'll
the
see.
better,
Yes.
the better, in my opinion, too.
Yes, everybody has an opinion on it. That's where so we'll see, you know.
Yeah. We do have a couple questions from the audience. So first,
Great.
what are your brands currently doing in terms of your in-store and e-commerce strategies?
Yes. All right. So e-commerce is definitely, I mean, that's one of the areas that truly accelerated over the past year. And I think as it relates to beauty, beauty e-commerce is growing, you know, double digits every year. I mean, everybody kind of spiked this past year, but in terms of like our beauty brands, it's really a lot of effort has been spent making sure that like our content online is super educational. So especially as people were home, you know, and quarantined, you know, making sure that we were really providing strong education on. So I'll take, for example, from a hair color perspective, if you had not been doing your hair at home and you ventured into the category for the first time, you know, we were developing content and materials to be able to truly educate you on how to use it. So lots of how-to videos, lots of tutorials, and chats with influencers and experts. So really making sure that that kind of A+ content was available and accessible within kind of the e-commerce realm, but also, you know, on our own social channels to make sure that we were driving the education. The other thing in this past few months, the business, we launched an app called Choicify, which is, you know, an AR-based app where you basically take your picture and you can adjust what different hair color looks like. So it's technology that I know is definitely coming to the forefront as it relates to hair color and cosmetics that are kind of being used more broadly. But that's something that we launched and integrated that within, you know, our brand site. Then I also know retailers are leveraging that technology quite a bit as well to really aid the consumer. And, you know, and I'm excited. I think Henkel as a company is definitely, you know, all in on testing and learning kind of new pieces where, you know, there's a lot of effort in how do we drive e-commerce with grocery across our beauty businesses. So there's a lot of kind of test and learn programs in place. So that's on the e-commerce side. And then on the in-store piece, so in-store is a little trickier. I think it's interesting. One of the big trends that's happened from a retail perspective is every retailer seems to be launching their own media group and company. So it's like a big trend right now. So as a brand, you know, we have every retailer wanting us to purchase their media, of course, to, you know, really drive awareness and reach within a particular retailer's consumer group. And so I think the jury, and from my perspective, the jury is probably still out on like the effective, like the true ROI and effectiveness of it. But I think in general, you know, I love that, you know, everybody is thinking of how can we better reach consumers in this new kind of digital landscape. So whether that's with how do we help her become more aware? How do we increase the consideration to how do we, you know, help her convert no matter where she wants to shop? It's all love in my perspective. It's just a matter as a brand and a business owner, making sure that we're doing the right things for the business and for that particular retailer and really having a good grasp on where our consumers and shoppers are for your brand. But
and like you said before, omni-channel is the buzzword. So yeah, whichever way those shoppers want to buy, it's up to them. So
absolutely, we should be here to supplement that. And I think the retailers, you know, the smart retailers realize that, and everybody is kind of, it's like a race to the top.
Right. And then another question kind of along the same lines is, what do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce and the biggest opportunity?
The biggest challenge, okay, so the biggest challenge to e-commerce and the biggest opportunity?
Yes.
Well, I'll start with the opportunity. So I feel like the biggest opportunity, frankly, and I'm going to speak specifically to like beauty, is I feel like with the pandemic, one of the wonderful things that I've seen is it's basically like almost a paradigm that like forced everybody to become, more digitally savvy and to really up their use of like working within, whether it be e-com or, figuring out, looking something up online or buying within a different space you hadn't bought before. So if you're digitally native and younger, was probably like, duh, like, doesn't everybody do this? But the amount of people who were forced to figure out, I think is wonderful. And I think that's going to continue to grow. And from a beauty perspective, one of the challenges we've always had in e-commerce, depending on your product, is beauty products aren't really, in the scheme of what you can buy online, aren't really that expensive. So, the average retail price, when working in an e-commerce perspective, like it was just a low, like either dollars per ounce. It's just a lower ring or sale. So it's always been a challenge to kind of get to the ring amount that you need to either get your free shipping or for it to make it worthwhile for that retailer to actually ship it to you. But I think with COVID kind of pushed all of that, pushed some of that aside. And so now it's more normalized to kind of buy any and everything online. So I think that will continue. And I think that's a huge opportunity for businesses that, are still continuing to like accelerate e-com, is how can they find ways to make it easier and simpler and convenient, no matter like what channel, which e-commerce channel, or whether it's, buying from a social media feed. There's so much really cool technology and things out there to enable that. So that's the opportunity side. The challenge, I mean, that's a good one. Let me think about that for a second. What do I feel like the biggest challenge is? I think so on the same vein, I said like the opportunity is the growth. I think the challenge too could be that anticipated growth and making sure that we are either we're building the technology to deliver it, or that as businesses, we're working extremely hard to kind of maintain and grow. Because I think because as we went into last year, one of the interesting things I found is every brand I knew had like triple digit growth on e-com. So this is before COVID hit. But when you peeled back and you asked, well, what are the building blocks to get there? Like, how are we going to do it? No one had an answer. And then COVID hit and everybody like exceeded their goals. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. But like, it took like a natural catastrophe and disaster to hit it. So I think continuing that strong growth is going to be the challenge, and figuring out what's going to be necessary to continue to drive e-commerce penetration, to continue to be creative and innovate on new ways to easily bring products to life. I think the area of like voice, so with your voice apps, I think with like Clubhouse as a voice social, I think there's some cool things in voice that I don't know the answer, so I'm not like Gary V, but if you follow him, there's some cool things that are coming that I think as brands, we just have to quickly kind of get with it to stay like where the innovation is trending.
And hopefully, people's behaviors have changed and they'll continue to, use what they learned over the past year. So
absolutely.
Thank you for all of that great insight and knowledge sharing. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I feel like you're already so up to speed on everything, Melinda, after being on this brand for not too long. So it's exciting hearing all the exciting things you guys have in store. And so great to have you both here today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Emily.
Yes,
and great talking, Amy.
So nice to chat with you, Melinda. We'll talk soon.
Yes.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Well, what another great panel. So glad to have both of them joining us. And, it's not too late to invite a colleague or a friend who you think